What is going on, Hawks Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Hawks Fan TV. As always, I'm your host AC, and I hope you guys are all having a great day out there so far. In today's episode, we will be discussing some potential Bradley Beal trades, rumors, speculations. I made a video about this last week on whether or not the Hawks should go after Damian Lillard or Bradley Beal. I was super against it, but since that video, more and more news and reports have been coming out of the Hawks potentially being in the mix for Bradley Beal. I think that's more realistic than someone like Damian Lillard. We're going to get into that. Now, before we get into the video, I am joined by another special guest backed by popular demand. He is making his second appearance on the Hawks Fan TV show, and that is Jake Gordon. Jake Gordon is the co-founder of Sports Talk ATL, big-time sports publication that focuses on all four of our major sports teams here in Atlanta. So he is joining us today. Jake, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, man. I'm definitely excited for the draft tomorrow. I have my eye on a couple guys at 20. Will the Hawks make a trade? Will they unload Chris Dunn and maybe pick up another pick before then? Yeah, who knows? I think it's going to be a very interesting night, even though, they're not picking as high as they usually are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of things that we can do. I would not be surprised if Travis pulled some crazy strings and maybe moved up in the draft or traded back. Who knows? But I'm certainly excited for sure. Jake, we've talked these past couple of days about doing this episode. I know you have gone on record talking about how you think the Hawks could potentially go after Bradley Beal, how you think it might be a good idea if the Hawks went after Bradley Beal. Now, the reason why we're discussing this is, as I mentioned in the intro, there have been lots of rumblings about the Hawks potentially being in the mix, most notably from a report that The Athletic came out with just a few days ago, and I quote, "Teams around the league will eagerly await his decision. If he becomes available, he's not just a guy, but the guy this summer, unless, of course, the market for Lillard starts to crescendo. The Warriors, 76ers, Heat, and Hawks could all get in the mix according to sources." So that is pretty interesting. Jake, what do you make of that quote?
I really think it's all smoke at this point. I doubt the Hawks have reached out to the Wizards. And, before we start, I am going to take the Bradley Beal position because I've taken that position probably since mid-2019 when we were awful. I had no problem. I was like, I give them all the picks. We got a couple young guys, But now when you see this team gel like they are under Nate McMillan, it's kind of hard to break this group up.
Yep.
But I don't know. I feel like Nate McMillan wants to keep his guys, and I don't know how much Travis Schlenk is going to value that. As a GM, I don't know if he's going to take his wishes into consideration. That may not be his wishes. Maybe he wants, a Bradley Beal or somebody like that. But I think Beal is definitely, I think he's just a picture-perfect fit for the Hawks if you do go make a trade like that.
Yeah, so that's interesting because definitely there have been a few fans that are super for Bradley Beal, you being one of them, and then there's a good chunk of us that say, it's not worth it, we shouldn't break up our young core, we're just getting started. So, a player like Bradley Beal, who, in my opinion, isn't a top 20 player in the NBA, he's a really good player, but top 20, not in my opinion. What makes Bradley Beal so enticing for you? Why would you want to go after him?
Well, obviously, no disrespect to Trae Young, but he's more of a facilitator. He's a point guard, and we saw him take on more of a facilitator role this year. Bradley Beal is a guy who can take the ball and get you 50 any given night. I mean, he scored like, I think it was 40 or more points in like 8 straight games last year. I think the Wizards lost every game. But, he can go out there and he can get it, man. You need a bucket, you got a guy right there. And we saw some of that value that Lou Williams provided, even though it was off the bench, even in the playoffs. And then Kevin Huerter in the Kevin Huerter game 7 against Philly. When you have somebody like that who can take the ball and, put it in the hoop and score and score and score, that could be a big difference, especially for a team like the Hawks that feel like they're one star away. And you can argue top 20 players all day. Bradley Beal is still a star. We can both agree on that.
Yep.
But I think he would be incredibly valuable. But it comes down to the price, man, and he's not going to be cheap in terms of money or in terms of what you got to give up to get him.
So when it comes to actually acquiring someone like Beal, Jake, what would you do if you were the GM? What would you be willing to give up, the most you would be willing to give up to get someone like Beal?
It's funny because, it's like, all right, well, I guess the starting point would be, Cam Reddish or DeAndre Hunter. I'm like, well, I really want to give up either of those guys. So, but, you got to think, you got your big three young guys. If you just want to throw in, obviously you're not trading Trae Young, but let's say you got Reddish, Hunter, Okongwu. I think, it's even hard to say Okongwu is the most valuable, or I would say the one I'm most willing to part with, because we saw how he locked up Giannis in the playoffs at times. And I gave him the Bam Adebayo comp, and I think he could really reach that level one day. But he's out for a few months with that torn labrum. And so you wouldn't feel the impact as immediate because you weren't going to have him anyways. So I think you got to give up one, maybe two of those guys. And then you look at, maybe a filler, a guy like Kevin Herter. It could be attractive. Something crazy, maybe even a sign and trade with John Collins, which I'm not in favor for either. And then they can have every single draft pick they want. I really don't care. The more draft picks, the better, because that means the less players the Hawks have to give up. The Hawks don't need more rookies. Maybe they take a swing on somebody just to try to, talk about resetting the clock like they may try to do with Cam Reddish in the draft. But as far as, the Hawks don't need to develop anymore. They're ready to win. They were in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yep.
So I don't care about draft picks. They can have the next four. That's if it can keep, a Reddish or a Hunter or an Okongwu on the team, and they'll just take all those picks, go for it.
Yeah, I tweeted this the other day on the Hawks fan account, basically saying that if we could somehow get Bradley without getting rid of both Reddish and Hunter, then I think we should at least inquire and figure out what the asking price is, because even aside from those two guys, we definitely have a lot of assets, I think, that can make for an enticing package. I think when we start getting into getting rid of Hunter and Reddish and Okongwu for someone like Beal, let's say we do offer that, and the Wizards GM says, you know what, that sounds great, let's do it. Would you make that trade for those three guys for Bradley Beal?
I'm going to go with no. I'm going to say absolutely not. I think you got to keep at least one of them. I'd prefer to keep two. And you still have Bogdanovich, and as much as I love Bogey, I just bought his jersey. That would kind of suck if we traded him. I really believe in Bogdanovich's ability to be, maybe that sixth man if Cam Reddish really does take a big step. But obviously he's a starter for now, and he may have to move to make the money work, which I really haven't considered before I start talking about this. But
I'm pretty sure Bogey has that no trade clause. So even if we did want to get rid of him, I'm pretty sure we couldn't.
Okay. So yeah, I didn't even know that.
Yep.
But yeah, when it comes to talking about getting rid of all three of those young guys, that's just something that I'm going to have to say, like, you guys really got to win a championship within the next 2 years, or you really caused yourself some trouble, especially when you consider that Beal, he has that player option in his contract. You might get left high and dry.
Absolutely, 100%. If we could keep at least one of them, I'd say DeAndre Hunter is the most valuable out of those three. But if, in my opinion, I think the most I would do, ideally, would be like a sign and trade with John Collins, Kevin Herter. We can throw in Onyeka if we had to, and then maybe like 2 or 3 future first-round picks. That's the most I would do personally. But yeah, it's interesting because if we did get rid of, let's say, 2 out of the 3, let's say we get rid of Cam Reddish, Onyeka, and 3 future first-round picks for Bradley Beal, that still leaves our defense. Do you think we can make that work? Do you think a lineup of Trae, Bradley, I guess DeAndre, John, and Clint? That's pretty solid.
Yeah, and I think Bogey's a solid defender too. You got a little bit on the bench. I guess Bruno Fernando would obviously have to take the next step. And then at that point, with Chris Dunn and his player option, maybe you consider keeping him for his defense so he can stay on the court. But Nate McMillan, I think a lot of the defensive, obviously, they drafted a lot of guys with high defensive ability. Clint Capella, obviously one of the best interior defenders in the league. But I think a lot of what Nate McMillan has done for this team, as much as he has done, is, a team defense mindset, a real, cohesive defensive unit. And it can mask some of the, the inefficiencies that we've seen, some of the shortcomings. Everybody used to always talk about how terrible of a defender Trae Young was all the time. And people don't really say that anymore because the Hawks play good team defense.
Yep.
So it could work. It's another thing. It's an effort thing. Are you going to get that effort out of Bradley Beal? I don't know. It's one of those things too. It's just hard to break up that group when you saw what they could be, and a few injuries away. It's just a lot of what ifs, and it's hard after a season like that where you see all that potential to say, well, let's make a big change because this isn't going to work, because it could have worked.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the thing with Beal, in my opinion, like, yes, we know he's a bucket getter. We know he is an elite scorer, at least given the situation that he was in. Now, we've seen that his two best seasons ever as an NBA player came these past 2 seasons, right? On 2 fairly poor teams. Last year, the Wizards missed the playoffs. This year, they barely squeaked by, basically on the shoulders and backs of Russell Westbrook, just going on that godly run. So, aside from that, like, the Wizards should not have made the playoffs this year. So we see a high-volume score on a pretty bad team, and he has average shooting splits. I think he shoots, like 36% from the three, maybe a little bit less, a little less than 50% from the field. So, I mean, I don't know. Everyone says he's a great scorer, he's an elite bucket getter, but can he do that on a winning good team and basically not the number one option? That's my question.
Okay, so don't take this as any Russell Westbrook disrespect, but the way that Russell Westbrook gets his 10 assists and the way that Trae Young gets his 10 assists are 2 completely different ways. I've seen Westbrook run down the shot clock to about 4 seconds left and then throw the ball trying to get another assist so he can get a triple-double. Like I said, this isn't some big Russell Westbrook disrespect rant, but I feel like players, their efficiency can struggle a little bit with a ball-dominant point guard like Westbrook. I feel like with Trae, and with the way that this Hawks offense looked, where they were sharing the ball, they were making the extra pass, the last 2 seasons have been, as far as 3-point percentage, I think they've been pretty low for Beal. I think they've been, about 35%. But I think you see that shoot back up with just guys making the extra pass. And, maybe he would prefer to not be, not have to handle a load like that. It really all depends on the kind of player he is, personally. And I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. And I do think he would improve just because of the way the system is, but you got to have a guy that'll buy into the system.
Yeah, 100%. And, you touched on it earlier, his defense. We all know Bradley Beal as a poor defender, but, that's mainly in part of he was just on a bad team, so maybe it just kind of was more glaring at that point. Like we said, with Trae Young, he had that bad reputation of being a poor defender, but it didn't get as talked about as much this season considering the team's success. So, a lot of people say, and I've went on record saying that a backcourt of Trae Young and Bradley Beal, although would be elite offensively, could get cooked on defense, especially in the playoffs. Opposing guards and teams would just have a field day against us. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, and that's one of the things going back to when I say you got to keep one of Hunter and Reddish. You got to have one of those guys. Because I trust Nate McMillan to get the most out of them as long as they're healthy. Okongwu, he's an awesome defender. He was a Giannis stopper. I kind of say that a little tongue-in-cheek. But, he plays really good defense on Giannis. But when you look at Reddish and Hunter, maybe they can't play that good a defense on Giannis, but pretty much every other guy I believe they can. Versatile wing defenders that can shoot in the NBA, you can never have enough of them. They're like cornerbacks in the NFL. So I think you can't get rid of Reddish and Hunter in a hypothetical deal. I think it just leaves the defense way too exposed.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I'm afraid of, because I feel like the Wizards are going to ask for something along those lines of trying to get both of those young players, which in my case is definitely not worth it. At the end of the day, I trust in Travis Schlenk, Jake. I think we're going to make the right move. He's given us no reason up till this point in his whole entire tenure for us not to trust him. And, it's going to be an interesting offseason. I think, in my opinion, this is probably the biggest offseason in franchise history, given the success that we just came off of, given all of these young players that we have, Trae Young breaking out as a superstar. Ideally, Jake, what's the perfect? I know I'm kind of switching off topics here, but what's the perfect offseason that you want to see has happen going into the start of next season?
Yeah, and as much as I like Beal, I'm in favor of keeping the band together. Not everybody, of course. Tony Snell, Solomon Hill, we may say goodbye to those guys. Lou Williams, kind of 50-50 on. I guess it depends on how much money he wants. Because we won't have bird rights on him, and so he would count against the cap and not the luxury tax. I think you go and get yourself a guy who can block shots and shoot as a big man. Gorgie Dieng, I think he's perfect for that. I like Alex Caruso as a backup point guard, especially if you trade Chris Dunn. He can shoot and he can get to the rim and he can defend. So, as a backup point guard, I don't think being a great distributor is as big of a deal as it is for a starting unit. So, I like Caruso. I think in the draft, I would like to see a couple guys. Maybe Jaden Springer, maybe Ayo Dosunmu. He's my guy. Just because I think he's perfect as a backup point guard. He's a junior, older prospect, 22, so he's a little more ready to play. But really, I think I trust Travis Link's decisions at the end of the day. With Okongwu being hurt, maybe they could look at a guy like a Harry Giles or somebody that can come in and just, be that defender, really athletic big man. Maybe even Rashawn Holmes if he comes at the right price. And obviously bringing back John Collins. Probably should have mentioned that at the top. I think running it back with a fully healthy team, from what I saw last year, I'll take us against anybody. Yep. If Trey doesn't step on that ref's foot, I hate to sound like I'm making excuses, but we could be talking about a different NBA champion.
Oh, 100%. That's a hill I'm willing to die on, Jake. So, I've been ranting about that, and yeah, very unfortunate, but it is what it is. We'll have our revenge season tour next year. Before I let you go, Jake, final offer. What's the ideal trade? If we did get Beal, what are you offering? Let's hear it right now.
Okay. Like I said, I prefer to keep these guys, but this is what I think it would take. Not really what I would give, because if it was up to I would give, it probably wouldn't be very realistic. I'll say Okongwu, the 20th pick, 2 future firsts, and Kevin Huerter. With only one possible year left on his deal, I don't know. Maybe if he agrees to an extension, then we're talking about a really big asking price, but that's putting the cart before the horse. Like I said, my ideal scenario is hanging on to Hunter and Reddish, because I know they're both going to develop into such great players, but that's the price you got to pay to get somebody like that. And if I had to keep any of the 3 young guys that we talked about, I'd say I got to keep Reddish. I'd say he's the guy that I would want to keep out of everybody.
Oh wow, okay, that's an interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm super high on Reddish. If I had to choose one of those 3, gun to my head right now, I think DeAndre Hunter is probably the smartest choice. But I think out of all 3 of those players, Cam Reddish definitely has the highest ceiling. He's got the highest ceiling, but DeAndre Hunter has the highest floor. So it's interesting. Like I said, I hope we keep both of them. And it's funny to see all these reports now coming out of Cam Reddish and what's going to happen with him, especially that athletic report that came out earlier today of how we're interested in listening to other offers, which, I mean, that's not too much of a surprise. But back to the Beal topic is, if that's all it took, Jake, if all it took was Kevin Huerter, Onyeka, and 3 future firsts, then I would make that deal yesterday.
Yeah, and I don't know if it would. It's the contract, man. That's really what it boils down to. That player option, if he stayed for 1 year, the Hawks didn't win, and then he left, boy, oh boy, you're going to be looking foolish. Yeah,
that would be bad. There has to be some sort of way to guarantee a re-sign. But, I mean, who knows? If we have lots of success next season, and let's say we make it to the finals and get within a game or 2 of winning the whole thing, then I think Bradley Beal would have a hard time not coming back and trying to run it back. So it all just depends on how the season unfolds. Again, if we do make those trades and let's say we're a first-round exit, then yeah, if I'm Bradley Beal, I'm probably re-signing with a more of a contender. So, yeah, it's just going to depend. But I'm excited. Like we said, we trust in Travis. I have full faith and confidence in him. Jake, it was a pleasure having you on once again. For all the listeners and viewers out there, where can we find you on all the social media outlets?
Twitter and Instagram, you can find me at Can'tGuardJake, and of course the Sports Talk ATL main page. I'll be on there sometimes. We're going to be doing some Hawks draft coverage. We've done a couple scouting reports and everything, but we'll definitely be paying very close attention to the draft. That's definitely one of those I can at least take the hands off and say, look, Travis Schlenk, the only first round pick I would say he's missed on is probably Omar Spellman, and he was the last pick of the first round. So. Yeah.
And which, in my opinion, I thought Omari Spellman could have had huge potential. I mean, we saw flashes that during his summer league and rookie year, but I don't even know what the hell happened to him. He was just I feel like he just gave up on basketball after his rookie year, which makes no sense. But
Yeah, I kind of think it might have been a weight thing.
yeah,
And I mean, even then, Schlenk flipped him for Damian Jones. He wasn't a terrible player. I mean, he still got something out of it. He cut his losses at the right time.
exactly. All right, well, Jake, I will certainly be on the lookout for all of your draft coverage from the Sports Talk ATL. So yeah, excited about the draft. Thanks again for joining, and hopefully we can connect soon for a future video.
Absolutely. Thanks, AC.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Bye.
All right. Well, Hawks Fan TV, you heard the man, the myth, the legend, Jake Gordon from Sports Talk ATL. Bradley Beal to Atlanta, maybe. I know. I was super against it in my previous video I posted last week. But if the price is right, I mean, it's kind of hard not to get him. I think pairing him up with Trey could certainly have its benefits. But again, I don't want to overpay for someone like Bradley Beal. If they're going to ask for both, like DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish, I'm not doing it. Even if they ask for two of Onyeka and DeAndre Hunter, Onyeka, Cam Reddish, I don't know if I do that either. Maybe, I don't know. But I would be willing to spend and go a little bit deeper for someone like Bradley Beal, because at the end of the day, I do value scoring, and if you can get more buckets than the opposition, you're going to win the game. So it's interesting to see how this offseason works out. My gut tells me that Bradley Beal is going to remain a Wizard up until at least when he hits free agency next year. So guys, don't buy into the rumors too much. So we'll see what happens. Again, I've said this before in all of my shows. Trust in Travis Schlenk. He's been masterful, and we have no reason to believe that he's going to lead us astray. So guys, that's it for today's episode. If you guys like this content, like the video today, please give it a thumbs up. We will be posting weekly and daily content all about the Hawks 24/7, 365, all year long. Especially once the regular season starts back up again, we will be doing live streams, taking live caller reactions after every game. So if you want to be a part of the show, I want to hear from you. I want to take your calls. Please hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys for watching. Go Hawks, and I will see you guys next time.